Greetings, I am Lance.
And I am Scandal.
And let's stare and listen together.
Yay!
Just staring and listening together.
It's the cat
All right.
theme.
Yeah, at the polite cat. It's fine.
Yes.
All right, so we're just going to stare and listen while Miki has her moment and see where we're going with this.
And seem fairly emotionally unavailable in that weird way, too, which I think is interesting.
I mean, the game's not giving us a whole lot to go on here, but it is like we kind of are, girls are being emotional, I will be quiet, kind of thing.
Right.
Like, that's all I'm getting from it.
Right.
And I don't know if it's supposed to make us sensitive, or supposed to make us overwhelmed, or supposed to be like, I am trying to support you by letting you have your like, I don't know what it's meant to be.
I don't either.
I'm also just like, Miki going, I'm this thing, I need to be this pillar, this icon of perfection and coolness, and I'm the, you know, basically the admirable, you know, one, but also the one who can come in and be like flashy and, again, cool. And I need to maintain that personality. It's very important.
Hardcore badass, that is me.
I am the badass hot nurse, yep.
Yep.
But I guess I do make mistakes once in a while. I fall, I stumble, and I hurt my knees every now and then. Don't hurt your knees.
Why?
And there's nothing wrong about that. Like, you're okay, it's fine. You can have mistakes. For all I know, it only proves you're human, which we were all very concerned that you might not be human, and now we know, so that's good. Because, you know, robots don't make mistakes.
Right.
At least you're not some...
Oh my god.
Oh my god, there it is! I was joking!
Oh my god, why did you have to look into the future and read it? I need to know why you read the script.
I'm too familiar with tropes. No,
Oh,
my burdened eye. At least you're not some heartless android walking around to look after patients. You're real, flesh and blood, soft and curvy and warm, and professional. Professional.
Okay.
You know what? You're right. I needed that encouragement. Thanks, mister. Now, I better get back to the nurses' quarters. Quarters? Not like their station? Like the nurses' station? We all just go into a room together. The nurses' quarters.
I would like to know the origin of the writers for this thing, because, man, I cannot decide if it's like somewhere in the UK or what. Nurses' quarters.
I'm like, the nurses' quarters.
Now, I better get back to the nurses' quarters. Maybe I can find an ointment there. You know?
I'm also like the nurses' quarters. To me, sounds like, do you live at the hospital? But also, are you talking about the pharmacy? Are you talking about, like, access? Like the nurses' supply area?
Cabinet, yep.
Yeah, supply cabinet? Like, what is quarters meant to mean in this case? Because I'm like, you know, the communal nurses' room where all the nurses who live here go to.
Except that they don't. And sure, they have overnight stays and places where you can sleep, but actually in some cases, too, some nurses literally just sleep on empty hospital beds because they don't have places for them to stay. Like, that's their 5-second, 10-second nap that they're allowed to take, you know, kind of thing, before they have to go back to work. A lot of nurses actually work a ton of hours, and they're very appreciated, but, like, wow, they should definitely pay them more.
I don't even know if pay them more is really what it is. I think it's a more complex issue there. It's sort of making support and, you know, having enough staff and being able to have rotating shifts and that kind of thing.
I agree, but however, paying more would encourage also more people to show up anyway to be in the position of being a nurse. I don't think that it's unreasonable to go that I think that a lot of the positions aren't really filled because people go, I can't live on that.
As far as I know, actually, from my experience of having one relative who's in nursing, there's a lot of times the jobs are all full, but the hospital staffs less nurses. Like, they have less openings for nurses because they're basically spreading them as thin as they can reasonably.
Right.
So if they added 4 more nurse jobs, you'd probably get 4 more nurses applying.
Right.
Like, I've never heard that nurse pay is bad. I've heard that, like, orderly pay is bad. I've heard that nurses assistant, like, nurses aide pay is bad. But, like, and I don't know, but from the people that I've heard that work as a nurse, even when I worked in a kitchen in a nursing home for one of my very first jobs, like, the one who was the only registered nurse on the entire staff, which was who doled out the medication, she said the pay was great.
Yeah, see, I mean, and I've heard that, but I've also heard, as time has gone on, that the pay has slowly but surely not really started to measure up to what it used to be. Like, being a nurse is not as good as it used to be.
Okay.
So, like, and they're getting anywhere so here in the United States, getting anywhere from about $13 to $15 an hour, which for some people, depending on the amount of work or where you live or your bills, that's not a lot.
I've never heard of it be that low.
I did.
Ever. Like, I've heard, like, $30, $35.
Yeah, no, $13, $15 an hour.
For a registered nurse? You're kidding. That's what a nurse's aide makes.
Yeah.
No, that's what the nurses' aides make, and they don't have a degree.
Well, they still should get paid more than anyway, even if it is just in the orderlies. Like, in my opinion, you're working in a fairly sensitive field. I mean, everybody should have a living wage, period.
Yeah.
Like, it's still not enough, so...
All right, a complex issue, but
Yeah.
now I better get back to the nurses' quarters. Maybe I can find an ointment there. One single ointment.
A single
to cure
oint
everything.
for my mint.
Want me to accompany you?
What?
Why?
Dude.
Why?
Why? This is...
For what reason? Are we afraid she can't walk? And how would we possibly support her while we're in a wheelchair?
No kidding.
Like, how could we assist at all while we're in a wheelchair?
With a leg that's probably stuck out jutting from the wheelchair.
Two heads are better than one. Let's go. What?
Why?
I don't know. Why would she want us to help her at all? Unless she's directly trying to engage us as a patient. This sounds weird as hell.
What is with the character, like, that we're playing? Like, so we're clearly having some different opinions compared to what Mister's experiencing. And then also, like, Miki alone is just bizarre as well, because this is completely inappropriate behavior, but we've also called them out when it's been in other games where it's been inappropriate behavior based off of what we socially understand, like, princes are supposed to act like.
Okay, so from this scene, I'm also going, okay, if Miki's supposed to be the strong, cool, perfect one, do patients normally accompany her to her, medical tasks? To her, if this is ointment for herself, to her own self-care routines and activities? Are we completely exemplary special because we saw her fall and we're the only person in the world that's ever seen it, except we didn't see her fall, but we saw her post-fall in a vulnerable state?
This is so much like the facsimile of what people think hospital, like, care is about. Like, this really does sound like a fetish hospital.
You just get to go and hang out with the nurses all day because that's what you do. I'm like, no, you don't. Even the idea of you get to go to a hospital and just sleep all the time. No, you don't. They wake you up constantly to check on you.
Yeah,
My mom has complained about it, going, I cannot get any sleep at the hospital because they'll come in and wake you up when they do your vitals and talk to you and see if you're coherent and how your medication's affecting you. Like, you cannot just... And, like, hospitals, they're meant to take care of you, but, like, not get you rest in, like, a continuous long-term sleep.
Yes.
Kind of thing. I don't know.
Well, because they're also trying to check your mental state, so it makes sense as to why they wake you up, but when some people go, I'm just so tired, but it's like they're not waking you up, like, constantly.
It's every several hours.
Yeah.
Maybe every 4 hours or something like that.
Depending on also the level of care you need, too.
Yeah, it depends on why you're there. Okay. Two heads are better than one. Let's go.
For what?
We arrive at a familiar hallway. It's the vending machine hallway. I mean, the one with the vending machine. The one that was all the way across the other side of the hospital. It still doesn't have any lights on.
It's really weird.
It's super unusual. Also, like, what is this thing on the wall back here at the end? It almost looks like a baby changing station or something like that. I'm kind of giggling about it.
I'm kind of wondering, actually, if it's like a fire extinguisher station. Have you ever seen those? They actually, so they're opening doors where they have glass that's up on the top, so you can actually pop them open.
Okay, but
so
like,
I'm like, I've
shouldn't
seen
it have
before.
red down on the bottom then?
I mean, the lighting is dark in here. You don't know what it looks like.
I need to see. Is that supposed to be the vending machine?
Is that
supposed to be the vending machine?
That would be so bad.
Built into the wall, like some of them are, like a tampon dispenser or something.
Right?
Where they built into the wall.
No, I know what you're talking about. But I'm just like, that would be ridiculous, though, considering the size of the thing that basically
that we
they
described?
implied.
Yeah. All right. Oh, the one with the vending machine. The only hallway in the whole hospital with a vending machine. Must be a really popular hallway.
Like, dang.
The quarters are just up ahead. I'm going to take you to the nurses' quarters where all the nurses hang out and actually live and stay. And you know what? It's fine to bring patients there, so no worries. What are nurses' quarters?
What the crap?
They're just up ahead. Eek! Eek?
Eek?
She slips on the floor.
What?
Turns out she is actually really profoundly clumsy and has been the entire time she's ever worked here. It was actually those shoes we were talking about earlier. She should have been wearing, the actual job shoes, and she just wanted to wear something hotter.
Right. Also, by the way, her name is now Miki Bella Swan.
Oh, God.
That is her real name.
Miki, protagonist, love interest.
Right? So this is a horrific stereotype in regards to, basically, I would say, women love interests or female protagonists, basically, where for some reason there's a lot of emphasis on look how delicate they are by making them fall over all the goddamn time, like being number one really clumsy or like afraid of blood despite like their profession, and assuming that they are able to menstruate. That's why I said they are menstruating, which I hope doesn't mean that menstruators
equipped to do the menstruation.
Yes. I don't know what to tell you because I always find that to be really weird.
Okay, tiny rant time. I love this one. Okay,
Oh,
so
no.
I have talked to several male authors in my life, and I have told them, I've spent this time putting together this adorable little rant of going, I hate girl characters written that faint at the sight of blood. I really do, because it sounds completely preposterous when you think that all girls, and I'm talking about ones who can menstruate, because that's what they write in most books.
Yes.
And so...
Because most men authors cannot, for unfortunately, because they tend to be a little bit transphobic or a little bit stuck in their ways,
or just
cannot
unaware, very
yeah.
unaware. I'll say any of those things.
Yeah.
I'll say they write, they write girls as always possessing functioning uteruses. Because you know what? I actually had a friend that didn't ever mense, and they're like, this is normal. We can induce it with, like birth control if you want. But otherwise, whatever.
Why do you care? If you're fine, then who cares?
Then it's fine, exactly. I was say, anyway, so I said, okay, so every one of them either has to deal with their own period or the awareness and connection to their friend's period. But can you imagine someone being the faints at the sight of blood character and they get their first period, so they pass out when they see the blood. And then they wake up and see blood, so they pass out. And then they wake up and see blood, so they pass out. Someone comes in and helps them and tries to wake them up and keeps them from seeing the blood. You have to have them like assisted their entire period, because they're going to pass out every time they try and go to the bathroom or change their clothes or clean themselves. So you have to have somebody else there with them to either blindfold them and help them through the process, because it's only seeing blood, not, touching it, dealing with it, any of that kind of thing. Or there has to be somebody who's going to intervene every time they pass out and break into the toilet stall when they're at school, or help them in the shower when they crack their head open. This kind of thing. Like, it makes no sense. If you're writing a character that menstruates and you call them a girl, or otherwise, if you're writing a character that menstruates and you're going to say they faint at the sight of blood, you have got some, like, issues where they're going to need an assistant, where it's a type of at that point, it's like a disability of a kind.
Right. Well, and I was going to say, now sometimes even with those characters, you can have people who literally just faint at the sight of basically somebody else's blood, or basically the amount of pressure or whatever else. There can be extenuating contextual circumstances that will go along with it, but people normally, in my experience, don't just faint at the sight of blood. They faint at the sight of blood because they're afraid of basically what's going on. There's a lot of tension. It's really hot. There's a combination basically of numerous different issues to come together to make that person faint at the sight of blood, as it were. So being aware of that is something to basically do in order to avoid or basically subvert your trope, because wow.
It sounds incredibly unaware to me, because all the time you're writing these, cis girls that the author has put in there that are going to menstruate or are currently, able to do so and have had cycles, and they faint at the sight of blood. I was irritated about it actually in even the one with the Etiquette and Espionage series. You had the one girl who faints at the sight of blood, and I'm just like, how do you survive when you mense?
I think the thing is that was part of the point, maybe. Like, I kind of think I remember what you were talking about, but she was supposed to be ridiculous.
Yeah, she was, and it was ridiculous, but it's also impossible. So anyway, keep that in mind. And honestly, if anyone wrote a character that actually needed support assistance, like a caretaker during their menstrual cycle, because they genuinely faint at the sight of all blood, I would be impressed.
Or of the fact that they get around that by the fact that they don't mense, which would be really interesting also for those people of going, like, not only are some people bodied differently, but some people literally, like we've talked about, require basically chemical intervention to truly mense.
To begin their mense.
To begin their cycles. So it's like, you could do some really interesting things with that, but that would require a lot of thought. So,
All right, and so also this thing of, she slips on the floor. It occurred to me, just a little connective thing right here, where when we play the games directed at girls, we're the ones that get stuck at the vending machine. We're the ones that slip on the floor and hurt our ankle. We're the ones, as a girl, protag, that have all these things happen, and then the men interact with it. And now, I assumed the women would be different in this one, but they're not. It's just the same characters if somebody else is playing Miki, and then you suddenly slip on the floor while he's, wheeling along next to you. Oh God, what do you do?
Right.
Or do you let him help? Or do you shake it off?
Right.
Kind of thing. And trying to write this game from the other person's perspective, it sounds so much like one of the girl games. It's a little bit wild.
It's also really foreign to kind of read it that way, because so for me, it's actually, I think that's why I don't really know how to handle it, or it's been really confusing to me, because it's like, hey, by the way, I kind of realize now that what we have been playing is just basically from another perspective. So it is literally playing that version of the game that I really like to play. So I know it's not accurate in every single case, but I basically like to play something something that I like to usually term as the gender swap game or the cis swap game. Because usually I'm trying to go for something fairly dramatic in regards to the change, and then usually, so if you took the game, so like if we played Mind Mystic Dragons with a boy character who doesn't matter the bodied experience, then that's why I usually will sometimes come out and just go and say gendered experience, doesn't matter at all, of just going, imagine there had been a boy with 3 girl dragons, and that whole story
was exactly the same.
Exactly the same, and
Would
you
it
just
work?
had all these 3 hot, girls basically in fairly similar outfits, if not almost dead on exactly the same, because that's how I like to roll and go, why can't women wear those outfits if men can? And go, okay, well, why does that make you uncomfortable? Does that make you think of anything? What is this about? Like really breaking it down and getting it to sort of come together and go, okay, so where are my tropes and where are my expectations and why can't I get out of them and what have I grown up with, kind of thing, and learning more and more as you go along.
And so it'll help you pick out some of your biases and things. It can really be illuminating to what your beliefs are.
Yes.
I was like, but anyway, so she slips on the floor.
Yes.
How the hell are we going to help her while we're in a wheelchair with our leg in a massive cast that's just been casted since we, and we've woken up for the first time since the injury, and trying to lean over the side of our wheelchair to get to her.
Right.
Miki, here, let me help you. I flounder and say and realize there's no way I can reach her, and I try to roll into her if I try to get my arms near her because I'm unskilled with a wheelchair.
Right.
I offer my hand to help her up. She almost falls again, but she manages to balance herself holding onto my wheelchair.
How?
Is there water on the floor?
Does this person believe that, we have crutches or something like that? I'm trying to decide what this author thinks based off of the description that they've given.
Or how do wheelchairs work? What kind of a wheelchair do they think we have?
Right? I'm like, what wheelchairs are we using? Because I don't know very many at all that would allow for you to do stuff like this. And it's baffling. Okay, so as a more able-bodied person, not as able-bodied as my friend, though I will admit, I find this to be really confusing based off of the behavior that I've normally seen with people who are used to being able-bodied, and then they get reduced to being in a wheelchair for their own experience. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I apologize. I realize how reduced could sound definitely ableistic, but I don't know how else to...
They get shifted to a position where they now have to experience a wheelchair.
Right, where they go, I don't know what I'm doing. This is so different, right? Like going temporarily blind or something like this. My body has changed so much, and watching how some people are so awkward and so confused, and many people actually have gotten pretty aggravated because they go, I just can't do any of the things I used to do. And so I'm like, he seems really competent for somebody who's, number one, he's a kid, and while kids adapt much faster usually than adults do because they've had less experiences, this seems weird.
It seems wild. I would say I would tend to be like somebody in a wheelchair who's been there, and is skilled with it for a great length of time. That's their lifestyle.
Right.
They could absolutely reach down, and know where to put their wheels so it wouldn't roll or put the brakes on, so they could help her up, kind of thing. Like I can shift, turn, roll up next to you, put my brakes on, and then pull you up so my wheelchair doesn't shift. Kind of thing. Like I've seen some people very competent in wheelchairs, and I was actually really embarrassed one time when I offered to open a door for someone, and he was just like, no, and then opened it for me really flashily, and I'm like, thank you. It wasn't mean to be degrading. I've had to take wheeled things through doors before, and it just seems helpful. But anyway, it was very nice. I was just like, he had a lot of flair in his wheelchair game.
And he was like, excuse me. Well, and that's one of those things where you kind of look at it and you go, you're not disabled at all. You're abled in a different way. You're just differently abled, and that's it.
I have always liked the differently abled term because there are so many specific skills that people who have different mobility aids or limitations have, that those of us who are more what is considered to be able-bodied, those who do not have those limitations, we never learn those skills because we don't ever discipline ourselves. We never focus on them. We never think about it.
Right.
And it's like I've seen people, sew by hand with their toes, and I say by hand, so it's sew by foot. And they can do embroidery with their toes as if their fingers, if they had their toes were fingers.
Right.
And I'm like, you don't have hands, so you've developed your other hands, but I do not have that skill. Holy shit.
Right. I've seen some of it too, actually, where even people are like, I paint or I dress myself using my feet. It is one of those things that in our society we really do think very little of people who are differently abled, and that's very unfortunate.
I actually saw one girl, and it was really amazing, who did sewing with a sewing machine.
Right.
And she didn't have arms or legs. She did it all with her face.
Oh, that's super awesome.
She even threaded the needle with her tongue. It was amazing.
That's so cool.
It was really profound.
That is amazing. I was actually also going to say that we thought it would be really interesting, even in regards to these games. It was a side conversation that both Liza and I had just before we go, where we realized that, you know what, most of these dating games are incredibly differently abled unfriendly.
Yes. So we actually were talking about it, and in reference to our recent editing the Arcana, we realized that there's a scene that we chose where there's a really riotous dancing experience.
Yes.
And there was this sort of statement of going, one, the game has established you as being sort of wimpy, non-athletic, like in canon. That's how they write you.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever you would like your character to be, it's not, that's how they're writing you canon. And I went, what if you had a character with a cane or a limp?
Right.
And they suddenly do this dancing scene where he, swings you around and you are amazing and suddenly able-bodied. And they never describe your footwork in any other place. They describe you being dragged along or having to try and run or failing at running and lagging behind a lot, which you could put in with your narrative of having a limp or a cane. But suddenly you're just amazing and have high levels of athleticism. And we were very offended at the scene, not because our character wasn't, your sort of standard able-bodied, but because we had counted them as being non-athletic. So even just not being athletic, they didn't have the strength, the mobility, or the skill to do the kind of dance scene that was suddenly thrust upon them, and it was super weird.
Part of my brain suddenly wants to be like, you know what, I kind of want to make Corazon in need of a cane, just because I think that would be interesting and would offer something different. Anyway, so thank you guys very much for joining us. If you like what we do, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and please also feel free to go check out our Ko-Fi or our Patreon.
Yep.
We've got some links in the description down below. Please also feel free to share our videos with somebody that you think might have a good time with us. It just takes a single click, I hope. I don't really know, honestly, because, whenever I share videos with my friends, it's always just one of those things where I'm like, I don't even care, you need to see this thing. Watch me share. And then I really want to sit there and watch them obsessively while they watch it and just laugh really a lot while they just kind of freak out to whatever the heck I've sent them, because that's the kind of person that I am. And other than that, though, I have been Scandal.
And next time we'll figure out this dark hallway, and if we can help her up with our hand. And in the meantime, I have been Lies,
And it was great playing with you.
Bye!